Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today we have here a Alfa 33, not mine, with a no crank, no start, or sometimes when it cranks for a long time because the engine is not all that great. Well, the engine is good, but the tune-up of the engine is not all that great. The starter quits. So why does it quit? Some electricians said that the problem was with the wiring, so the customer already replaced some switches, some ignition switches. They are down on the floor over there. The owner of this car negotiates on old Alfa Romeo parts, so it has a lot of spare parts to use on the car. But it is a no-go, so the problem persists. Sometimes it cranks, sometimes it does not crank, and we are here now today to finally discover what is wrong with this start. So, or the starter, or the ignition, or the wiring, whatever it may be, we are going to the bottom of this. So the testing that you may perform normally requires two persons, but since I am all alone, I have to do this in another way, and I show you how to do it with just one person. By the way, this car was already here, and I did not record anything for that. For a brake flush, the car failed on MOT because of the rear brakes. The drum brakes were not tuned correctly or not adjusted correctly. It was on another workshop doing that, and it came out very bad. So now that is good. So it passed on MOT. I did the job myself. Okay. Also was here for a catalytic converter. There is nothing too special about that. Just to remove the old one, you put the back one again. And now it's here for this. It also will be here for the removal of the gearbox and the engine. I like to remove both to replace the clutch kit, the clutch set. It is worn out, and with that the gears grind even more. Okay. Also with the engine off, I will replace the radiator for the engine and some other parts, but not for this video, just for the future video. So a heads up for that, in the future that will happen. Okay. Now the starter is over here, and to perform the testing you do not need to remove here the intake, but to show you how to do the testing I will remove the intake, because if I need to replace the starter, it's better to take out here the intakes. Okay, it's not crucial, it's not necessary really, and possibly I can get away with it with just taking out here this intake. But if I have a low point of view for you, for the camera, I will remove here the intakes, because I also have to do that for another reason. The gaskets over there are bad. It is not that difficult at all to do that. Okay, also because you have a ground point over there that you have to test, and I really want to have the space, the availability to do that. Okay, another thing that I will do is to disconnect the RPM sensor, because I do not want the car running. I just want it to crank. The problem is the car does not crank, or if it cranks, it stops cranking midway through. Okay, so in order not to the car not to start by mistake, I will disconnect here the RPM sensor. So the removal of here of all of these parts will be on camera. I think you will appreciate that. Okay, it is a very simple system, unlike my 1.7 one. It's a little bit more easy to do. Okay, now I always think that is very crucial for you, the professional or the amateur or whatever it may be, to feel, to comprehend the symptoms. So I will crank the key, and you start to hear something here on the starter portion over here. Okay, let's try to step by step try to understand what is happening, and then you have to test the three things that you have to have on the starters. That is ground, the permanent of the battery, and the signal. Okay, so that noise was the ignition on only. Now the crank. I'm still cranking. Now took it off. Okay, this was a perfect example. Perfect example. I just took out here the hoses and the clamps. I take out here the intake portion so to see better. Take out here the RPM sensor connector so the engine does not start. Ignition on. Okay, now I will ask for the starter. It's not what I want. I want the failure. Okay, now I'm doing the starter. Can you hear? Okay, that noise was the starter. Okay, the starter is spinning very, very slowly. Now, why is it spinning very slowly? Is it because of the starter itself? Is it because it has no ground, enough ground? It has no enough positive? Well, we know that we may have the correct signal because it is spinning. Okay, some antifreeze will come out. On this car over here, one thing that was happening was this return line over here was clogged on this area over here, and the coolant was not able to pass through to the reservoir. So sometimes an overheating symptom was present. And when unclogging here with a big drill bit by hand, just filing it down, I was able to solve that issue. Okay, so sometimes an overheating issue or a symptom, like I always say, sometimes it is not, and that is solved. Okay, regular maintenance on the coolant will avoid this issue. Since I bought this swivel head extension, oh my god, so much easier, all of the work. It was very expensive because I bought a beta one. Why did I did that? Because previous of that I bought a, well, the cheaper one, and it was very, very, very bad. So I did upgrade to this one. Now over here you have the washers. Make sure to remove them. On this version we have 3 nuts and washers. Very crucial to not to drop them, because once you are removing the intake, they can fall out to the intake, and that is not good. Over here, one of the nuts is not accessible from the top. You have to do it from the side, but the other 2 are. Make sure your vacuum lines are good. I also have on this car here, on the fuel regulator, the vacuum line was all rotten, and I replaced that. Remember my video that I did about the rotten fuel lines, for example, on the 75 and 33. I have a video down on the description, so you can see that. And I dropped the nut. Where is it? Maybe on the floor? Maybe. Well, if it is down, it has no danger to go into the intakes, so I will move on. Broken. Again, beware of your cracked vacuum lines. As you can see, the beautiful thing of disassemble everything is, for example, the customer complained that sometimes the clutch pedal goes to the floor. Look at that over there. The moisture over there does not seem to come from the hose itself. It seems to be maybe loose, possibly. Well, whatever it may be, I will see if it is loose or not. If it is not, I will advise for a new flexible hose. It's time for that anyway. So the fitment over there on the cylinder, on the clutch cylinder was tight, okay? It accepted a little bit of tightening, but I can see already it is seeping. So a new flexible hose is recommended. Now you have here total access to the testing of the starter. You have the grounds over there, you have the positive over here, you have the signal, you have all of the space in the world to work. On this case is very not different, okay, but the ground does not go directly to the battery. It has some intermediate steps that you have to verify, okay? The positive it will, but the negative will not. So that is a big concern that you have to test. I already did a bunch of videos for starters and crank no start and everything like that, including videos how does the starter works on the inside and all of that. But sometimes we have to step back a little bit and take a look at the big picture. So we have here, I try to do here a picture to try to explain you how does the starter works, what involves the starting of the engine, okay? And this will do for 99.9% of all cars, gasoline, diesel, V6, V8, 4, 6 cylinders, everything, okay? Absolutely everything. Even if you have car network, instead of the ignition switch, you have a relay, but it is exactly the same principle of working. So, what do we have here? They crank the flywheel of the engine, okay? The flywheel has the T's, and you have here the starter with the solenoid attached or not to the starter. On older cars it is not attached to the starter, but it is the same principle, okay? So when you have the actuation over the solenoid via the ignition switch, we'll get to it in a minute, you have the starter pushing out the gear and spinning the engine in that way, creating a starter procedure, okay? Now, what do you have to have here in order to the starter to work perfectly? So we have here the negative, the positive, and the signal for the solenoid. So over the negative side or the ground side, you have the starter that is physically attached to the block of the engine. The bolts that hold down the starter actually pass through the negative to the body of the engine, okay? So the minus over here, being the body of the starter, goes to the body of the engine itself. We have here the engine, and then from the engine to the body of the car, we have another cable, and then from the body of the car, so, sorry, this one over here is the body of the car, okay? And over the body of the car, you have again another cable that goes to the negative of the battery. So you have to consider several failure points over this one cable over here. From here, for example, a problem with the battery terminal, a problem with the cable that goes to the body of the car, a problem with the cable that goes between the body of the car and the block of the engine, and also if between the block of the engine and the starter itself you have not a perfect assembly of the set, you can have also problems over there, okay? Then you have the positive that is straight from the battery to the solenoid, sorry, and then when you have ignition, so then when you have ignition over the solenoid that is also attached via the body of the starter by the negative, will close up and send positive to the starter itself, okay? In this way, we have the engine running. Now, the problem that we have over here, we have the ignition switch. It is working correctly, and we must have, while we are cranking, trying to crank, just listen that noise, we have to have here 12 volts. Okay, measuring with everything connected. Okay, while we are doing the same test, we have to have here 12 volts. And the same thing over here, 0 volts. So, in between these two proms over here, so the body and the positive of the starter, we have to have 12 volts. It may seem a little bit confusing and daunting, but it is not, okay? How can you test this very, very rapidly? Everyone has those cables to do the jump starts, okay? You have that, right? So you jump start one cable to the body of the starter, to the negative of the battery, ignoring everything, and try to see if the problem goes away. If it is the same, you can remove it or not, if you want to, and you jump a positive between the positive of the battery and the 12 volts of the starter, the waiting point, okay? That very thick one. I'll do on the card to show you, okay? You do again the testing. If everything is okay, so if the problem persists, it means that we have a problem with the starter. Now, with the jump cables, you can do that all by your own. You can do that yourself alone, okay? If you have somebody else to switch on the ignition, you can see with the multimeter or the voltmeter, you can test all of the points with that. Imagine this, you only have 6 volts over here on the 12 volt. It means that you have a problem with the cable or the connection. If you do not have here a ground on the starter, so doing between the 12 volts and over here, if you only measure 8, 7, whatever, 9, it means that you have a problem in between all of these connections. And then you can test on this connection, you can test on that connection, you can test on that connection, on this one, on that one, okay, on that one also. You can test everywhere you want, okay? The more testing you do, the more sure that you are doing a perfect diagnosis. This is a diagnosis. Not with the diagnosis tool, but it is still a diagnosis, okay? About again, I will test here the ignition switch, the signal wire, that very thin one that you have, but it is cranking, so it means that you have signal. The power, the intensity of the signal wire does not need to be very strong. You just need to close the solenoid. The only function of that signal wire is to close the solenoid. After the solenoid is closed, it is between only these two wires, the positive one and the negative one. Those two wires have to have 12 volts, or the tension of the battery, if it is another tension, okay? While you are cranking, never going below 10 volts, like I already showed you on so many other videos. A very specific video for that, also down on the description, okay? So testing everything, and I did test that on my 33 also, yeah, on the other video. But I did test it on the battery. This time we are testing on the starter itself. Okay, let's go. So we have here this starter that I took out from the 105 horsepower, the GTD engine. There is this one is bad. So just to show you over here. Over here you connect the 12 volts that come from the battery, and those 12 volts are not connected to anything until you have 12 volts signal over here from the switch, from the ignition switch. At that point, those 12 volts will pass from here to here, in which they will power up the brushes, and the negative is already present on the body of the starter, and boom, in that way you have a starter working. So one of the probes does not matter the color, okay, but I will try over here the positive, the red one, to be more perceptive for you. You will put there on the signal wire that comes from the ignition switch. It is, like I said, the thinner one. Over here on this starter, it is just a clipped-on thing. On some other ones, it is a threaded one. I will try to make it snug like this to do the measuring. The other probe goes to any ground near you. So the negative, I can insert it there on the negative. Now, while you are cranking, see there if you have the 12 volts for the signal. The voltage may drop to 10 if the starter starts running because you have consumption on the battery. I will crank it now. I do not want that. I just want... Come on, fail. Does not want to fail. Let's do it like this. So obviously we have signal because it does crank, so we have to have signal. And we checked there about 9 volts, almost 10. The battery started to get a little bit low. Okay, that does not make it better, because if the problem is not constant, you have to find... It may be misleading. You have to do the testing when you have the fault present. Now, okay, I have here almost 9 volts. Let me see on the battery when I'm doing this what I have. If you have literally hot wires, it will not do a perfect contact. Now it heats up because of this play over here. Now, does this wire go to the starter? Possibly, or it may go to somewhere else. So yes, this black one goes to the inside of the car for the accessories and whatnot, and this one goes to the starter and the alternator because they are connected in between. So poor start and poor charging of the battery over this problem over here. Let's see if it is the final problem or not. Most of the times it is not, and as you can hear, the starter is a little bit going bad, but one step at a time, like I always say. Just like this, man, just always get suspicious. You can put your hands, try to feel it. Whenever you have a hot wire, it means that something is not right, being the thickness of the wire not correct, or the correct assembly of the wire. This is completely loose. Completely loose. Maybe here a decent washer. So underneath everything is okay. I will clean up here this tab. In some countries this may seem very obvious because of corrosion, for example. But here in Portugal it is not. We have very low levels of corrosion. So this is a little bit hard to happen. Try to get a firm connection on it, but be careful because this is fragile. The problem seems to be fixed. Let's wait a little bit. Now and then do a quick test to see if it cranks again. Meanwhile, assemble here the top part of the engine and see if it runs good or not or whatever. Also see there if it charges good or not, but the symptom is gone and the problem seems to me that is gone, okay? So like I told you, the problem normally it is on the negative side, but on this case we have there a problem on the positive one, and very clear also, very clear to see. I will probably do a back check there on the negative side, because that is very, very common to happen, just to make sure that everything is nice to the future. so we do not have any issues. About here, this flexible hose of the clutch, I will pump it for a bit. Yeah, but it is bad. It is moist already. To see if we need to change that, okay? About the bleeding over here of the circuit, I do have videos for this. Lots of them, actually. I have a playlist for gearboxes and clutches and whatnot. And then and on that playlist, you have the videos that you need to do this part of the job. And that's it. As you can see, the problem is completely solved. Also, the problem there with the flexible hose is solved, and it is a high quality one too, because it's thicker and a higher diameter than the simple brake line, flexible brake line. Do not forget on the starter on these cars to see the plate that is attached to the starter. The plate holds down most of the grounds, including the ground between the body and the engine. In this case, it was not necessary to deal with that. We just had the problem over there. I will put a prettier washer over there, a smaller one, to be a little bit more presentable, but the problem was over here, as you can see. Okay, I did there the bleeding of the clutch hose that stays between the cylinder, the pedal one, and the gearbox one. If you need videos for that, they are down on the description, titled playlist for clutches and everything related to that. I also have a playlist for the coolant systems, because I deal with that over here. How to deal with all of that, it is down on the description, a playlist for that. I have a playlist for electrical issues and symptoms and solutions. I have videos for batteries, I have videos for starters, I have videos for crank no start. This car sometimes cranks a lot and does not want to start, and I saw that it has a lot of smoke, so the spark plugs may be a little bit clogged with that, with oil. Maybe the valve seals have some issues with age. It's normal to happen, so we have to have some care with that. But for now, the car is ready to deliver for the customer. I will just do a test run on the road to see if everything is okay. Finish up here charging the battery, because this cable over here comes also from the alternator, jumps to the starter, and from the starter to the battery. And if it is loose, the battery of course will not charge 100%. And with that, guys, again, down on the description I have really a lot of stuff that can and will be useful for you. Please check out the description of this and all of my videos. Also, download the description, you have links for helps for the channel if you are able to do so. Okay, I see you next time, guys. Bye.